So I am back. I'm not really too eager to talk about my absence. However, I do gravely apologize to all of my supporters and followers. I promise there is a good reason for my absence, and it basically comes down to I literally could not wear my suit for any period of time. It was a mess. Anyway, enough of that. I'm back, and while I was on my absence, I was doing a lot of reading. And I mean a lot. I was rereading the Nightrunner series by Lynn Flewelling. And this is the point of the video where everyone who knows me in real life promptly shuts down because, dang, I've been really annoying the past month about Nightrunner. On a related topic, I actually commissioned a local artist, Jupiter_art, on Instagram to design a tattoo based on the series, which I will be showing off as soon as I get it. Go follow them on Instagram and support them on Patreon if you'd like to see more of their work. Links will be in the description below. There's something else. So before we get into this, I should tell you how much I love this series. Well, my name, my persona name, is actually based on the series. The pet name that the two main characters call each other is, well, the long form is Talimenios, which means beloved or soulmate. And it's this old school phrase basically equating to calling your partner, well, beloved nowadays. But the word is very frequently shorted to Tali. And in the case of saying it to a woman, it's Talia. And there we go. We've gone full circle. And that's how Myffanwy names her shit. Just take the names from other people. So Talia comes from Tali, which comes from Nightrunner. Now we're just getting into potential spoiler territory while I summarize the books. They're nothing too heavy, just some minor spoilers. But if you'd like to read the books as fresh as possible, then please, by all means, stop the video now. I won't feel bad. Ruby, however, I know you watch my videos, so this is mostly pertaining to you. So the first thing that you'll probably hear about the series if you look it up is that it's wildly gay. And it is, make no mistake. The two main characters, Alec and Sergil, are very much in love. But don't get me wrong, don't pick up the first book and expect them to meet each other for the first time and bone right there. Oh no, there are 7.5 books, and they don't even start a relationship until the end of book 2. Not to discredit it as not gay, but it is a very natural progression. They become friends first and foremost, literal partners in crime, and they build their trust and start to learn their boundaries with each other before becoming lovers. They learn what jealousy is and how to talk to each other about it and how to find out how they feel about other people in their relationship. I mean, for example, in the second book, Alec finds Sergil entertaining, and I mean literally entertaining, not entertaining, people at a male-to-male brothel. And he finds he can't stand the way that Sergil is talking to these other men, and he feels frustrated, confused, embarrassed, angry, all typically normal reactions. However, at this point, they aren't even in a relationship yet, so the primary struggle for him is why he feels so possessive and upset, and he has to sort out his feelings and back away from the situation because he knows it's not okay to think that way. And before he can confront Sergil, he needs to understand how to approach it in a better way other than saying, I'm mad, I'm hurt, and making it about himself rather than why he feels this way and change his way of thinking. It's stupidly healthy as a relationship, and I've never read a romantic relationship, straight or gay, that grows its characters first and then builds the relationship over top of a good friendship. And while I know everyone, like myself, likes to throw the word gay around with this book, and they are certainly two men in a same-sex relationship, but I think that discredits Sergil a bit. See, Sergil has had quite a few lovers, men, women, and while non-binary folk aren't exactly explored in the series, in the second book, he does have a line where he says he's had many partners of many genders and backgrounds, but none so much like you. Now maybe I'm trying too hard, but I sincerely believe that at least implies he's pansexual rather than bisexual. Alec, on the other hand, can be debated to be bisexual, but I personally firmly believe he's gay with some past female experiences. And speaking of female experiences, great segue, do not, and I cannot stress this enough, don't assume this is a book about two boys doing boy things. Oh no, if there's a book with strong women role models, it's this series. So the royal throne is a matriarchy, queens and the daughters of queens. The queen isn't even actually required to have a husband, just have a daughter to continue the lineage. All the queens are fiercely battle trained. They're proud army leaders, intense fighters with astounding skill and bravery, and not even just the queens, all the princesses as well. But before I forget, I should quickly mention that a major part of the series is actually that there's a war going on between two huge armies, and it's actually a huge plot point for a solid portion of the books. So that's kind of why everyone is battle trained. But for me, the two best examples of wonderful women are named Clea and Becca. Clea is a princess and arguably the toughest character in the whole dang series. In the third book, for example, she gets her arm mutilated, and by the end of the same book, she learns how to work around her disability to be efficient in battle. Becca, on the other hand, is not a royal. She's a farm girl with an incredible father who loves and supports her, and she works her way up through the ranks rightfully through skill and leadership. She's experienced loss, trauma, you see her broken and desperate, but she doesn't allow herself to be saved by someone. She fights her own battles. Yes, she does rely on other people to kind of help her through, but that's not the main point of her problems. Even though in the fourth book she gets married and her husband joins the battle, she fights with him rather than for him, because she still makes it quite clear she fights for the queen. And within the span of 2 books, we see 2 queens fall in battle, one of which leads directly to the victory for the good guys. But it's the fact that not one, but 2 queens give their lives in a fight for their country alongside their countrymen, and that they showed immense respect and admiration for those that they fight with, not letting people baby them for being royalty, but giving and commanding respect. And I mean, one more than the other, but I'm not really debating that right now. So I don't really mean to imply that any character is flawless. There's no lack of problematic characters and situations. However, they're not meaningless or swept under the rug either. And that's also the good part about it, as problematic feelings get sorted out through and discussed in a mature way, and those characters who undergo development and growth accept it and continue to work through toxic emotions and actions. And those who don't aren't glorified or pitied, but they're rather scorned, which is cool to see. I mean, I have my share of problematic faves, but I think it's harder with Nightrunner because the truly deep-rooted, problematic, toxic characters are not the soft, squishy boys of anime land, but instead they're dangerous and awful people. And again, every character can have problematic tendencies, but if they acknowledge it and work through it, then that's the wonderful character growth, not if they refuse to fix themselves or the issues that they cause others. And I have such a huge respect for this series, and now it's time to stop trying to convince you to read it, but now go through each of the books one by one. So if you decided you'd like to experience them as fresh as possible, but still have an understanding of the series, this is the second and final warning to stop the video before extremely heavy spoilers happen. And Ruby, I know you're probably still listening, so this is it. Cut it off. Read the books. We have book 1, Luck in the Shadows. Right off the bat, it starts with Sergil rescuing Alec from a dungeon. And it's not beautiful fate or anything, it's literally just, hey, you're trapped too, come on. And they start their journey. It's a little tropey at times, which is mostly fine for it being the first book in a long series. And it follows Alec primarily. He's essentially the equivalent of a prude religious boy at this point, as we watch him turn into a successful nightrunner or thief. And we see his moral dilemmas from that, and the way he gets through the trauma of losing his dad, being imprisoned and tortured, and going halfway across the world with a random stranger. It's really his story for the majority of the book, with a sprinkling of other side stories here and there. I mean, we do learn a little bit about Sergil, who is in exile from his home country due to a murder that may or may not have actually been his fault. But we don't really get more of that story until book 3, so really it's primarily him. And I would talk more about how Alec learns to trust Sergil, but let's be fair, in the first book, he's primarily Sergil's caretaker due to an incredulous lack of judgment from Sergil himself. Long story short, he stole a disc that may have actually belonged to a necromancer, and it slowly poisons him, and as he grows weaker and a little bit crazier, Alec kind of has to take charge in this, which helps him grow a little bit as out of his shell. And as Alec learns more about the world and he travels alongside Sergil, we start to feel less like it's his story and more of a story about the world and characters inside of his backstory. And we experience more of that once they enter the city of Rimini, which is mostly where the rest of the series takes place. Now again, this is about 2/3 of the way through the book, so we've already gotten a lot of Alec. And in this book, we are introduced to all the main stage characters, Sergil's longtime best friend Mycom and his wife Carrie, and their children, including Becca, Elspeth, and Elia, the wizard Nysander and his apprentice, which is Sergil's very loosely termed rival, Thero, Princess Clea, and a vague overview of the royal family. The rest are introduced at later points in the series, but these are the main people we will continue to see dominate the storyline for each book. So it kind of builds up this necromancer plot, and I mean, you have some moments like Sergil accused of plotting against the queen, which he's totally innocent of, but the big ending for them is scaling a dungeon to kill a big bad who was essentially supporting the necromancer in a way. It doesn't really end as a cliffhanger, because originally this and book 2, Stalking Darkness, were one really thick book, but during editing, the author was convinced to split it into 2 books due to its generally overwhelming size, so it is recommended to read one right after the other as soon as possible. So that leads us to book 2, Stalking Darkness. It gets dark. Right from the get-go, it's a lot darker in tone than the first one, as now we start getting more and more about this necromancer. And to be honest, for me, it's kind of hard to separate some of the scenes from the first and second book. They're kind of a blur, and it's not because I don't remember them. I just don't remember which book it was. It's just one big journey. So basically, in order to defeat the necromancer, they need to gather up 3 items to make a helm, which over the point of the book we end up getting. Later on, Sergil meets an oracle, which tells him that to Alec, he shall be a father, brother, friend, and lover, which the last word basically puts Sergil into an existential crisis. So, to kind of overview them, he is what's called Orenfe, which is kind of like their elves, and although he looks 25, he's really 57, and Alec is 16 or 17. Now, okay, so before everyone starts freaking out, Alec is discovered to be half Orenfe, so him and Sergil actually have pretty much the same lifespan. And at this time, 16 is actually considered an adult because they can hold titles and land and stuff. It's a pseudo-medieval setting, and they don't even get into a relationship until the end of this book where he's actually a bit older. Either way, that's kind of what has Sergil freaking out. And as we get the story back into political intrigue, Alec ends up trailing Sergil when he goes out one night, and he ends up in said male-to-male brothel that I mentioned earlier. And it's pretty crucial for the relationship, as this is where Alec sorts out his own feelings and Sergil comes more to terms with the prophecy and his own feelings for Alec. They each go through their own development, and then we escalate back to the whole necromancer plot. And to try to summarize, Sergil suffers an incredible loss of his home and his servants in a very traumatic way. Alec and Sergil's rival Thero get captured by the necromancer and tortured. Emotional drama, and about 5 chapters later, the climax of the book starts to build, and it's honestly hard to put this down for any amount of time, and I won't spoil the big twist, but afterwards, Sergil is left emotionally distraught. Alec is conflicted and rightfully kind of traumatized, and Mycom, the sweet bean, takes the 2 of them back to his property with his wife and children. Sergil tries to run away, but Alec stops him, and that's when the 2 of them sort out their shit and end up mutually agreeing to stay together. They end up sleeping together, but the really dirty part of that setting is actually in the short story compilation, Glimpses, which is what is often referred to as the half book. So this book kind of ends with them helping each other cope with the shit that happened, leaving their own home city behind to start a new life together. Then we have book 3, Traitor's Moon. So if you're like me and you can't pronounce things properly to save your life, and complicated words just end up as vaguely recognizable sounds when you read, well, you're in for a treat. This book primarily takes place in Orenin, the land where Sergil was exiled from. And everyone who lives there has at least 5 surnames. They're all kind of hard to pronounce, so if you need any help, there is an audiobook available, but to me, I just saw the first couple syllables and was like, okay, I think I know who you are. Anyway, Sergil gets a special pardon due to the war breaking out and the good guys wanting Orenin, which is a pseudo-neutral party, to open a trade port. This one is very heavily political with a lot of slower moments. And personally, I really enjoyed this book as it explores a lot of Sergil and his own backstory, but I do understand why some people don't enjoy it so much. Compared to the first 2, it is a bit slower. There are some quick things before I forget, and they don't really fit into anywhere else. This book has a lot of continuity to it because events that happen in books 2, 3, 4, all kind of mold together leading up into books 6 and 7, primarily 7. So it's important to note Thero gets bitten by a dragon in a very intimate part. And that's actually super important for book 7. Alec learns about his mother and learns her name for the first time and the facts surrounding her death. And then we learn about Sergil's first lover, Ilar, and we begin to grow a huge dislike of this guy, and we feel angry along with Sergil as he retells the story of his exile. We also get another prophecy, and this time it's Alec's turn, as he is told he will beget a child of no mother, and he ends up distraught. And although he's in a very gay relationship, he still assumed he would have children. Oh, poor religious babies. Now, I, for one, didn't really understand Alec's sadness, as it seems very obvious to me that it means he'll probably just adopt a child. I mean, it literally says he will have a kid, just no mom. I don't know, it irked me. Anyway, there's a lot of back and forth, yes and no, he's bad, no, he's bad, no, the first guy's bad, no, wait, he's dead. But it's really good in the end. Sergil uncovers this plot from Orenin to not open a trade port, and he breaks the terms and conditions of his return in order to solve the intrigue. So he's actually declared officially dead to the country. They denounce him entirely, and he is no longer Sergil the Exile, but Sergil of Rimini. So it's kind of bittersweet. I actually really enjoyed it. Now, book 4, Shadow's Return. This one kind of fucked me up, I'm not gonna lie. So Alec and Sergil are captured and separated and sold into slavery. Now, just to be clear, they're not really together for most of this book. It's kind of their separate stories. We spent several chapters watching our boys being tortured, beaten, humiliated, among other things. Alec, being half Fae, is valued for his blood and sold to a necromancer, who uses him to create a being called a Rekaro, which is essentially created because it can heal and prolong life. Fair warning, there's a really weird scene in this one where the necromancer implants sexual images of Sergil into Alec's head in order to collect certain fluids from him. He needs blood, tears, sweat, hair, and semen. It's by no means graphic, but it might not be pleasant for some people, as Alec does recall it several times as a primary source of embarrassment and minor trauma when he retells his story to Sergil. They end up making 2 of these Rekaro, as the first one didn't work, and obviously, since these are created with Alec's blood, he develops possessive traits towards them, which is dangerous given he has literally enslaved solely to create them. In the meantime, he befriends a fellow slave, one that works to care for the other slaves. Yeah, they have this weird slave hierarchy. And over the span of about a third of the book, he becomes Alec's only solace as he is separated from Sergil. Unbeknownst to him, Sergil is actually in the same building, and the slave he befriended is actually Ilar, aha, the douchebag that destroyed Sergil's life. And although now he's castrated, enslaved, and has no right to his birth name, I, for one, still got super angry at him, and I wanted nothing more than to see Alec or Sergil drown him in a pond. Anyway, long story short, a successful Rekaro is created, and Alec falls in love. Seriously, he becomes this, mama bear. And shortly after, he learns through Ilar that Sergil is kept there. So eventually the 4 of them escape after Alec kidnaps the Rekaro, which he named Sabran. They discover that, yes, Sabran does have exceptional healing powers, but not only that. Okay, huge spoilers. But Alec dies and comes back thanks to Sabran. Again, this is actually very important for book 7. And one thing I hate, probably more than most things, is the fake death trope. However, the thing I hate most is in queer novels or queer movies, one of the lovers always dies. So part of me can forgive it just for that, but the other part of me is actually totally fine with Alec dying just because the way they pulled it off. So yeah, they already knew Sabran kind of had these exceptional healing powers. Not only is it is a magic society, but the way they pulled it off, it wasn't just, oh, I'm dead. No, I'm not. It was emotional, it was so well written, and although not necessarily plausible, I don't think anything with magic really is. So, although my heart broke along with Sergil's, and maybe selfishly, I just really like seeing him back, so I could kind of forgive that one trope. Also, we find out Sabran can kill people by screaming. So I guess he's literally the encompass of a 5-year-old, I guess, but it's all good. The closing scene of this one ends up with a seer telling them that Sabran has a heart of a dragon. Book 5, White Road. Okay, so this is probably my least favorite out of all of them, but I still rate it a 5 out of 5 on Goodreads because, I mean, it's Nightrunner, and it's still something. That, and we kind of get a glimpse of Sergil and Alec as daddies, and it just, I don't know, maybe it's a daddy kink, but fuck, I really enjoyed that. It starts with our two boys trying to get back to life in Rimini, but it's kind of impossible with Sabran, who Sergil doesn't actually really like at all, and he kind of spends the book basically being a distant daddy who just wants to make Alec happy, but he also just kind of wants to live alone with his husband and not worry about their creepy child staring at them. So they head to Arenin, which is basically the land of dragons, to find out more about Sabran. And I think my favorite part of this book is during a celebration dinner. Sergil really wants to go have him and Alec leave Sabran in their room, and he starts to scream, which his screams kill people. So they're basically like, oh shit, we can't leave him alone. So they have kind of like this confrontation about what to do, because Sergil really wants to socialize with the people, but Sabran will literally kill someone because he has more separation issues than my cat, which says a lot since she claws up carpet, posters, holes in the wall just because I wasn't home. So then they do the only logical thing, and they force him to stare outside of a window so they can bone in somewhat peace. And then we get back to a serious storyline. There's a bunch of Fae coming after Sabran, because they are somewhat being led by a Rekaro who thrives in their society. Eventually, after over half a book, Alec agrees to let Sabran go. It emotionally devastates him, and I admit there's a small, very small part of me that kind of felt bad for Alec, but really I was on Sergil's side for most of this just because Sabran was just really creepy. I can't really summarize this book anymore. I mean, it was a little boring to me. So, but book 6, Casket of Souls, holy crap, that made up for it so much. This book is so freaking good. And I was super invested in this one as it felt like a complete return to the second book style. It was full of action and mystery and night running. So basically this troupe of actors comes to town and they're all phenomenal and quickly become quite successful. But at the same time, a bunch of people start dying. I mean, you can already put 2 and 2 together on this one. Mostly people in the slums and poorer neighborhoods are dying, but quickly a lot of nobles start dying too, including friends of Sergil and Alex. It's super suspicious and everyone kind of starts to panic, and they actually end up saving the life of a boy named Mika, who has wizard powers and becomes Thero's apprentice. As well as they end up saving one of Mycom's children, which, to be fair, letting them die would have destroyed any relationship they had. Well, of course, long story short, they figure out that 2 of the actors are actually the ones screwing up everything. Not their families. Their families are actually totally innocent, but they end up saving the day. Which, last but not least, book 7, Shards of Time. Well, fuck me up, boys. This book has consumed my soul. So our Gabies become barons of this property on a sacred island. However, this island has recently had their governor and his mistress mysteriously murdered, and the only 2 people who witness the aftermath are in custody and babbling messes, spouting out about ghosts and demons. So Sergil, Alec, Mycom, Thera, Mika, and Clea, so that's 6 people in total, the sextet of the ages, goes over to solve the mystery. Very long story, kind of shortish here. The island is in fact haunted by ghosts. It's pretty common local knowledge, but Sergil and Alec turn their new property into a refuge for Oran-Fae slaves. They discover the island has a parallel dimension that can cross over, but only the dead can walk with the dead. So, like, the second dimension is essentially necromancers and dead things. But Alec and Mika, who are 2 people who have died and come back, Alec through Sabran and Mika through Thero, they can cross over, both accidentally and purposely later on. Sergil gets attacked by a Dermagnos, and so does Clea and her army. She gets kidnapped into the separate dimension, and it's discovered she's pregnant by Thero. And since it's common knowledge that wizards are barren, well, remember in book 3 when he was bitten by a dragon? Haha, well, they fucked and fucked up. So anyway, Alec and Sergil spend a lot of time parting ways and angsting over potentially losing each other, because this is building up to be a bigger climax than the second book. So it's getting kind of dark, kind of heavy. It's really fucking great. After most of the dramatic, wonderful, stressful adventure, however, I'm just going to glaze right over it because it's such a wonderful read that I can't even spoil anything. It's just a fucking adventure. They're all lucky as heck to be alive. Sergal and Alec reunite in a sappy, romantic post-battle coitus. That's a fun word. It's a very happy ending. Except Thero does become blind, but I mean, we all get fucked up, I guess. They go back to night running in Rimini. Thero and Clea have a baby girl, and Mycom goes back to his family. Everyone who survived lives happily ever after, and it's just so fucking good. Guys, I can't stress this enough. Just please go read these books. I mean, they're not excessively popular, but I'm sure your library will have them. If not, they are pretty freaking cheap. They can be found on thrift books, Amazon, Indigo if you're in Canada. You can probably get them at Barnes & Noble if you're in the States, but I'm in Canada, so fuck me, I guess. Anyway, if you want to keep hearing my voice rant about weird shit, please support me on Patreon. Even just go to some of my social media. That's all free. So anyway, I'll see you later, guys. Thanks for having me back.